Hey guys. Um, so that song has just been stuck in my head, and I played it last live. It also felt very appropriate. I don't know why. There's this like melancholy to it that I really appreciate. I always put it in Pacific Standard Time, so I guess this has been confusing for the second one. I'm gonna wait to really start until we see about 60 people in the live, because that's our average, so we will see. I'm on time. Yeah, I know. Weird, right? Did I get a haircut? No, I didn't. It's just doing its own thing now. It's just really long. So I'm just gonna hit that one. Good morning to the banana bread you didn't share, only. Well, good thing I have more banana bread that I'm not sharing. So, it says good morning too. Ooh, Jordana, I am sorry. I just had this idea that I noticed people were not going to make it. And since we normally do it earlier than 3, I was like, am I messing things up? So if I do it around the same time as before. So, yeah. Am I late often in real life? Tessa, am I late often in real life? She said, don't put me in a position that I'm going to regret. Yes, I have a serious problem with time. We do not get along, but I'm fascinated by it. That's one of the reasons, I don't know if you guys know, I have an obsession with watches. I really like watches. I have a small collection myself, and most of the time that's why I'm wearing a watch, because the time does not agree with me. If you can see, I even have like a watch tan on this wrist, kind of. You never tasted banana bread? Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm glad the time change is better for some. Okay, well good, Jordan, I'm happy that you feel that way. So let's dive right in. Give me 1 second. It's earlier than this. Oh man, I'm just rereading the end of winter before spring and summer, and it's just, you pickle a breed, love. I feel so bad for her. So since we're talking about the entire, of course, I'm glad the postponement worked out for everyone, or a lot of people. Oh my gosh, clumsy days are a good sign, actually. I think it's good luck. I need a time manager. No, I need better time management. The second half destroyed me. I think I like the way that structure kind of worked for the book. How we learn about the kids, and then in the second half, in spring and summer, which is often seen as like the young, right? Like, I know when they talk about lives in someone's life, they're like, oh, my summer, and then my spring, and then my fall, and then my winter. It's really interesting that we start with fall, and then winter, and then spring and summer, but we talk about the kids in fall and winter, and then the adults in spring and summer. There's got to be a purpose to that. Does anyone else think that's interesting? Am I the only one? Do I still hang out with Dom and Kat? Yeah, I see them frequently. I'm probably going to see Dom later today. Oh my gosh, another pasta talk. Is this what this live is going to become? A pasta talk? Seasons have a higher meaning, right? And it was more like she thought she got blue eyes because of what happened with her dad. She felt like that's what defined her beauty. The second part is a very disturbing thing with pasta, because I can't eat much. I've noticed it's... Right? It's extremely interesting that happened, and it is crazy. Like, that type of touch that she received from Charlie. I kind of like am afraid to talk about it with Tessa in the room because I don't want Tessa the book to get spoiled for her. I mean, we can't. I can't just tell you to leave. Amy Lumsden, you haven't missed much. We're just about to start. The one note that I made that I found it interesting, that the beginning of the book, when we were learning about the children, when we were learning about Piccola and Maureen and all of that, was in fall and winter. And we were learning about Piccola's parents, the Breedloves, and then the minister, I don't know, guru that gave her blue eyes, was winter and fall. It was spring and summer. Because often when we talk about life in the terms of seasons, spring and summer allude to youth, whereas winter and fall allude to old age. So she mixed those things, and I think, which is interesting, because it's like she wanted us to see the weight that the children were carrying passed down, and then she wanted us to see how these earlier seasons, these people, became the people that raised the children in a way, the instances that defined them, and helped their, oh my God, Maddie, I would take a look at Spark Notes and then forgot. Exactly, normally fall and winter stand more for an ending, so I think that's interesting. And yes, Lexi, that's exactly what thank you, exactly what I think she's bringing up, this generational trauma, this intergenerational trauma. Because of an entire season, the fall is just going to start right again. And I think that's exactly what. And then it's also interesting that it's named fall, like the loss of, the decline of. You know, that was not lost on me. She shows us that she shows us what the adults came from in their youth. Their experience means the kids don't have a true childhood. Yes, that's exactly what she's alluding to, and it was really interesting to come to that when I finished the book, and then I noticed those things. So it was like, what? I think that this is also a way to make violence generational, as her parents were victims of violence and replicated on their daughter. Yes. How are the kids going to do better when the adults are struggling with this? It's also interesting that the writing isn't focused on single characters. I think it's unfair to push the burden of adults onto children who aren't even prepared to handle that. Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the main issues here, was that these kids, I mean, how many times did the children blame themselves for things that they couldn't explain? I think the first instance that we see this is in something completely natural. When, is it Frida or is it Claudia that start menstruating in summer or in spring? And that they blame themselves. Oh, did you do something? No, you're doing this. And then anytime something new happens, it's their fault. It's not natural. There's no nature to it. And then I have to say, Frida thinks she's ruined. Oh my goodness. Piccola started, I mean, so this idea that anything that happens to them is their fault. That generational self-hatred, too. It's heartbreaking. Morrison uses natural cycles to underline the unnaturalness and misery of her character's experiences. Wow, Maddie, that's a great quote. Where did you get that quote? I would love to read the rest of that article. Oh, everybody, we have an author amongst us. I know many of you are authors as well, but one of my best friends, Joshua Venkataraman, you see Josh Venkat. His profile picture is actually the cover of his book. I brought it up, and I think during this time it'd be really cool to just bring it up again. His book is Accidental Activist. Justice for the Groveland 4. Again, if anyone hasn't read it and is interested how to make a difference or the process by which someone can do that, this book is a great and very insightful, inspiring read into how an average dude with an incredible ability, one of my best friends, I can say that, decided to change something and worked really hard to do it and then achieved it. So, cool thing. Now back to this. It's just like that, the children are caught in something their parents had. And it's interesting to imagine what would become of Piccola's child if she didn't become mad in a childhood. I agree. And that's one of the... I mean, when you think of the metaphor, the fact that she was so in hate with how she looked and how she was treated because of how she looked, she drove herself to madness to find peace, to blindness to find sight. Just like an incredible book. The children's part is probably the worst to read because Pekola's story shocked me. Yeah. It's sad when parents are victims of violence and abuse and they kind of pass the trauma onto their children. Spark notes. Hey, good stuff, good stuff. Society tend to culpabilize children and teens as being enemies to order. I agree with that, and that's another thing. Like, the trauma we place on children because of the traumas we have, I think is something that is a theme in this book, but also just in life. You know, we don't realize as children that we're being taught certain things to, at times, in the fear that our parents receive from things, like, do not speak at this time, because when I was a kid and I spoke at this time, I got punished. So I'm just going to yell at you and tell you not to speak. I don't have to share my punishment with you, but I want you to learn from this. And all we see is this, you know, it's just very interesting. I will repost my friend's book later. When a person is brought up with violence, it's difficult for them as an adult to not follow the same cycle with their own kids, but I've always felt that nurture works too, to a certain extent, but everyone has a choice about how they want to act. No one can tell them what to do. Jordana, I feel the same way, but like, in my life, when I think of, okay, how do I behave here, I think of the examples I had for people that I trust and respect, people that society has told me to trust and respect too. I think of my parents, I think of my grandparents, and I say, okay, what would my father or mother do in this scenario? And unfortunately, those examples of what to do, I think of Soaphead Church. He felt his character was completely hypocritical. I don't know. I feel like, as much as we can say everyone has a choice, what if instead of having 4 choices, you only have 2? Because that's how you were taught. Yeah, you have the choice to act, but if in the, like, let's say you have different colors to paint with, and over your life, different people teach you different colors, compassion, anger, you know, all of these feelings are colors, and then it's your turn to start painting, but you only have the colors you were taught or actively sought out. And in the society that Pekola lives in, she doesn't see many colors, especially towards her, right? The only colors she receives are being made fun of, feeling small, being abused. So those are the only colors that she would have, because those are the only colors that were received and given freely by her parents. I don't know. So there's a lot of depth into that, and I would love to explore that. I was shocked how detailed she wrote about the rape, honestly. Like, I had to take a break after. To me, it was interesting that when I was reading it, it was almost as if I didn't want to believe what was happening. I was reading that and was like, and it did take me time to understand what was happening, you know? Wow, it's so heavy. Sorry, I was gonna read it out loud, but then I just kept reading it. And I was like, I can't make that out rude for some aspect, but the impact of the scene, well, it sounded like he actually cared for Piccolo for a moment, but he doesn't even know how. And that's the thing, Annie. That's the crux of it, is like that's the only way he discovered in his own life how to feel this. And we see that because we learn about him. And in the one time that there was a tender moment, it was ruined by this vile hatred and all of the contempt he felt in that moment. He couldn't put on the abusers. He could only put on the victim. Because putting that energy towards his abusers would give him no pause. It would give him no rest. It would only incite this lifelong hatred and eventual demise of himself, knowing that he could never overcome it. So instead, he put all of this hatred into the one being that has become the butt of hatred for everybody. Like the black woman. You know? A cycle that he continued, that he perpetuated, that free from consequence, he then left. I don't know. It's just, as you guys can see, I have so many thoughts about this. And I just ramble now when I try to understand what I think it means. If I can say it in Pauline's story, the medical violence against mothers and pregnant women is very punctual, plus the racial abuse. Yeah. It's disturbing first learning about Piccolo and that she was never loved, but raped by her father, and then knowing the story of Mrs. Breedlove and Charlie. I think that her madness, it's her way of survival, like people who don't get outside of their bodies, who get outside of, I had read that once and it's very interesting to understand. They have to disassociate. They talk about that with trauma, and at times you can disassociate from what has happened, and often, not often, but at times that can be a way to deal with trauma, is that disassociation. And yeah, I see this trauma in children a lot as a teacher. Working in a poorer district, we see a lot of terrible situations, and we have teachers have to not only teach the children, but help them to love themselves. And I think that's unfortunately one of the biggest jobs of teachers. Yeah, we're trying to educate a generation on history and hopefully to better a society, right? But I think one of the biggest needs of education is to teach a person their inherent value and their ability to change things, whether it means something global or a huge issue in the world, or it means something for themselves. They have that ability, and to teach someone that is so important. Yeah. I can't even imagine what do teachers do in situations like that. How does a teacher, someone who doesn't have access to someone's life all the time, really make an impact? I don't know. Being someone who's been through abuse and whatnot, I'll say reading this was hard. I've had to stop and then pick it up again multiple times, but in the end I found the book empowering. Wow, good. I'm glad. And you know, I want to say this beforehand. I apologize that I wasn't able to have a trigger warning or anything for books like this, and I'll look into that next time, just in case there are people that may find reading stuff like this a little more disturbing. I can give a heads up, and I apologize I wasn't able to do that before. I'll make sure I look into that in the next, in the future. But thank you for sharing your truth, and that's awesome. This book empowered you. I'd love for you to speak more about that empowerment if you can. But thank you. The whole chapter of Soaphead Church was disgusting, but then that's something else that I think is fascinating. The ability to rationalize the things you're doing. Almost the necessity to do so when it's something that horrific, Mrs. Breedlove's story, it's very impressive too, the way she described her life, the pregnancy, the sadness of the narration. The way the book referred to his act as a way of showing her love, seeing her, I still can't find the words for how far that made me feel. Yeah. And it took me to understand that it isn't the fault of her parents. It's their life and the things they are facing that cause all the pain for Piccolo. And I think that's one of the biggest things we're trying to learn and teach and understand, is the fact that, people blame crime and other things on people, which, yes, you can. come down to decisions that people can make. But if we really want to stop crime, we can't just stop the crime. We have to look back at what's causing it. What issues are creating this? Intergenerational trauma. Systemic issues. Systemic oppression that happens throughout generations. These things all lead to the necessity of crime to survive, to keep, so for people to say, oh, it's a crime, is literally such an easy bullshit way out. Sorry, I always try to refrain from cursing on these. I feel as though there are so many words in the English language, and only sometimes are curse words appropriate. You know, there are just so many better words. Knew he held no power against those white guys, so automatically he turned his hatred into fragile link. Yes. Okay, I'm just going to start reading and catching up on comments if everyone wants to do the same. Completely agree. I'm also a primary school teacher, and I honestly think that caring for children that are going through all sorts of things and teaching them that they are good enough is the most important thing. I agree. But blocking... So we're dealing with that and actually giving someone a new meaning. That's basically what I learned to do in therapy. Interesting. Toni Morrison said she wants to write the unspeakable. I find it interesting that there is a commonality in this trauma. The necessity for those enacting it and those receiving it to justify it, to rationalize it. And it's crazy how both the receiver and the giver of this traumatic act both rationalize it in an interesting way for themselves. I don't know. You know what? I'm going to read Soaphead's letter. It's interesting because they talk about how like God left, and I could get into a religious debate about that, but I don't know. I don't want to. Let's not get into religion. We talk enough about politics. How many Toni Morrison books have I read? We have now read 2 together, and I've read 3 in total. Jumping ahead, but can we talk about the Soaphead Church who gives her what she asked for? Was a child milestone? That was so much to try to take in, that he saw her and understood her. It's almost like Piccola's tragedy to Piccola freed her from having to live the life she has. It freed her from having to deal with her circumstance, and now she gets to live in this utter peace that she now has blue eyes. She's blinded to the world. And the trauma that she experienced forced her to do that. But in essence, it was not more traumatic for the other girls, but just as traumatic in the sense that it reinforced this notion that their lives... It reinforced this traumatic notion about the value of their life. the ability for it all to go away and how little power they had in doing that. Right? How does everyone else feel about that? Oh, molester, okay. He's a child molester. But that's another thing, how his trauma that he felt because of his inability to perform all of the things he felt that he couldn't feel from a child. He couldn't get rejected by a child. And if he did, he could... so all of the trauma that he had forced him to impose this trauma on other people. And then rationalize it. And because he was someone that had the power of God on his side, he felt as though it was, I don't know, religious things. I'm trying to not go too far in my ramblings. Which other book of hers do you recommend? I recommend Beloved. Do I have? Oh no, it's in my library at home with my parents. But Beloved by her is just brilliant. Brilliant. Interesting, because I'm finding this like commonality with like being, I don't know, I feel like growing up as a Latino but being raised in America, you're like, although I was always taught to be very proud of my culture, there was a part of me that was also embarrassed by it or afraid to embrace it for a long time because of how it made me other than American, and that wasn't cool. I mean, that was my thinking when I was young. But I see that in this book and understand it as that trying to shy away from being black or trying to shy away from being seen as this one thing that everyone didn't like, whether it was Piccola being a girl with brown eyes. And I just, from my limited understanding, that idea that you have to like deny yourself to be accepted is so destructive. And to think about that generationally now, the trauma that would produce, the sadness, it's heartbreaking. There's a part where Toni describes the hierarchy of discrimination. White women, black people, black women suffering the most of it. Mrs. Breedlove caring more about the other house and the little girl as they were beautiful, as that was what she had been influenced to believe by what she had seen in the movie she loved. I know, right? She couldn't even love her daughter fully because of the hatred she felt towards herself. It was really sad. Really sad. One second. I know, brown eyes are so warm and I just think it's fascinating that even though we'll never understand, Toni Morrison has given us a window through which we can see a different perspective, a window into a world that we can all actively, I think, agree we want to help dismantle this idea that you should be ashamed of any part of you that could be so beautiful, you know? Embracing your origins and culture when they're not the dominant ones, it's so difficult, but makes me really proud now that I understand it better. I am Amazonian and love being Amazonian. Just this morning I had a conversation with someone who said they were forward. The way forward was to erase all color. It broke my heart. Not to erase all color, to embrace all color, to understand that the rainbow is valuable because of all of the colors, not because they mesh into one. I think since Miss Breedlove cared about the people in the other house more than her own children, it caused Piccola to hate herself because she thought she looked ugly. Yeah. And I'm very proud to be American, I'm very proud to be Cuban, and I'm very proud to be Colombian. Okay, not as proud to be American right now, and actually I'm very happy I have another culture to attach myself to. But I could be proud of America again at some point. Maybe. It's looking more like maybe not, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll hold. But that's not what this is about right now. I wonder how hard it was for Toni Morrison to write this novel, to confront and acknowledge the system-like oppression of her own, like to discover that. I imagine it's hard nowadays being proud of being an American if you have the slightest sense of humanity. The thing is, like, the more, it's really where you want, what tree. Okay, so I once read a thing about emotions being seeds planted, and the seeds grow if you water them. So if you feel angry a lot and you give energy and water and care to that anger, that seed will grow and flourish inside of you. Whereas if you have compassion and empathy and you want to grow that seed, that forgiveness of yourself, whatever it is, you can grow those seeds. So unfortunately, when you examine history, especially, pretty much any history of an empire, it is fraught with destruction, genocide. There's no peaceful way someone achieves being one of the biggest countries in the world. And I say biggest because I don't want to say best, because I think that's bullshit. But biggest meaning a high GDP, one of the biggest economic impacts to the world economy. But you don't do that peacefully. And when you study the United States' history, it is fraught with terrible things the U.S. has done in selfish pursuit of its own grandeur. But that doesn't mean it can't use that power that it's achieved for good. Yeah, Lexi, the emotional labor she must have put into this book, and the fact that she wasn't satisfied with its result at the end. She felt she wanted to move people, not just touch them, you know? And I feel moved by this book. I feel that I do want to do more, to inspire that acceptance and self-love, to dismantle the systems that oppress people and that have for far too long in this country and in this world. And I believe our book club is striving to teach people to do that slowly. She said she wrote it because it was something she wanted to read and couldn't find at the time. I was honestly hoping Claudia and Frida would be able to help Piccola just a little. Maybe not ostracize her, but at the end, they're kids too. And the society around her, around Piccola, taught them what to do. Oh, ignore that girl. She's crazy now. Oh, she was the one that caused this to happen to her. All of these things that we're taught as defense mechanisms so we don't have to deal with things. America is a constant driving for democracy. Right, sure. Then how come in the history of America, especially when it comes to Latin America, we didn't put democracies in place? We put dictatorships in place. The same could be said for the Middle East. Yeah, now we're attempting, right? But who says they wanted democracy? Why do we feel the need to be carrying around this banner? The U.S. likes to use the idea of bringing democracy to a country to exploit that country for its resources, like oil, or like proximity to other nations that we want to be able to have an eye on. We have to do a deep study into when that is valuable. Maybe off topic, but I always wonder why Americans are so very patriotic. Like, what exactly are they so proud of that makes them so much better than other countries? Annie, it's not like Americans are informed. We don't learn history the way we're supposed to learn history. We learn the history that benefits this patriotic ideal. We learn the history that benefits us saying the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. I said the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag every morning from kindergarten till the time I graduated high school. If that's not indoctrinating, I don't know what is. I'll say it for you guys. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, if there isn't hypocrisy in that allegiance alone, justice for all, the same type of hypocrisy that's in our Constitution, all men are created equal. We do that every morning. We're taught that only 4 countries fought in World War II. That's not true, but we're taught that the United States' role in World War II was the most important and influenced the end of this massive world war that killed 68 million people. Upon deeper study, we discovered that the Soviet Union played a tremendous role in this war, and without the role of the Soviet Union, that war would have ended much faster. If the U.S. didn't join the war 2 or 3 years before it ended, instead of in the beginning of the war in 1938, maybe millions of people wouldn't have died. It's because we're taught to be ignorant to our faults and to excessively over-exaggerate our strengths. And that's why we have a president like Donald Trump, because he's the culmination of the American ego. I'm not saying we didn't do good things for other people as well. I don't want people to think I hate America, because I don't. And there's a lot of times when Americans had to step in and do something for good. It's just, do those balance out the times that we broke that promise? It's so important that there are Americans like you who feel proud about their country. I think it has to do with being brainwashed at a young age in public schools. I can't seem to get into the book. Like, really feel the emotion. It sucks, but I just can't seem to get that back. Hobbes. I wonder if reading out loud would help. I've done that with Toni Morrison's book especially. They're really great. I feel like if you read to someone, even if it's your cat, like I read to Stella sometimes, and it helps. That's it. Sometimes it's just the book. I know that my mother had a hard time reading Toni Morrison. I think English not being her first language, and Toni Morrison, in the way she writes, sometimes can be difficult for people like without English being their first language to really get into the color of her language. That could be another thing, but I suggest keep trying. Like this chant Americans kids do before school, it's allegiance, pretty much. The Pledge of Allegiance, yes. We do it every day before school. I fought against beauty standards my entire life because became the first plus-size Muslim in my region, but I could never really understand the weight of racial discrimination, never having lived it. Education does play such a major role in the event, even if it's miseducation. Guys, the reason I purport education to be so important is because of its ability to be misused, because of its ability to be abused. You see it in America. We have a ton of Americans assuming that we were World War champs and that we've been running the world since 1945 and all of these things as if we're the only nation that exists. That's education there. That's people thinking that they've been educated. And while they have been, that education has been abused. Education is such an important tool. And it's so important who wields that power. And that's why we create a space where we can learn from each other, where we can teach each other, where we can be open to ideas. Because if no one's ever right, and no one's ever wrong, it means we can always discuss what's best. And there is a right or wrong out there, and we're always trying to find it. But in the idea of having an open space where we can communicate, there's never any fear, I think. There's never any judgment. And that allows people to learn and grow. And then education can be educational. Or it can be indoctrinating. You know, powerful weapons can all be abused. In the bluest eye, the recollection of what I felt and saw upon hearing a child my own age say she prayed for blue eyes provided the first peace. That's why I keep reading, and it's her first book, The Immensity of Toni Morrison. To be honest with you, to read this and find out it's her first novel only speaks to the power that she cultivated over her lifetime and the ability, the true power she had with the English language. Like, this is her first novel, and it's immensely personal, impactful, expertly written with a beauty and color in language that is so unique to her voice. I love this book. Exactly, I think that she really underestimated the power of her writing. It moved me greatly too. Humans are odd beings, having a predator base but wrapped in an enigma. This book was the best to begin our Rosende Read Summer of BLM. I agree. It opened us to a lot of conversations and talks, and I'm very excited to read James Baldwin next. I think it's going to be a very insightful read. More banana bread for me, Rita. Don't worry, the next time I see you read, I'll bring you a whole thing of banana bread. First book, amazing. This book has opened so many interesting thoughts. After moving to Georgia, I've met so many ignorant people. I got asked if I speak European. As there are many Americans who hear that, like, oh, we can't go to Europe anymore? Fine, we don't want to go to Europe. We'll just go to Italy. And you can't even get mad. You just have to be like, all right, someone just didn't teach you properly. You should be mad at every teacher you've ever had. Or, actually, every teacher you've ever had should be mad at you for not learning.
Yeah, but that's easy to find out.
Yeah, that's really, just look at a map. Look at a globe. Look at your phone. It's anywhere. Don't be wrong, I love you as an actor, but I sure wish you could teach my kids or run for office. I hate to say this, I don't know if I'll ever run for office. Humanity is its own enemy. Sometimes it feels lost, but I always find a piece of hope now. And then that to make me think maybe it's not completely doomed. The way I equate whenever I get into sad places, because it happens a lot, you can ask Tessa, I get very disappointed about my country and the way the world's moving and the fact that people can't just like see other people as people and be kind. It really bothers me. But the thing that gives me solace is that for all the hateful acts I see and feel and the true depth of sorrow I can feel about the world right now, it takes one moment of kindness to kind of overcome that in a way. To kind of bring you back to this idea that, oh, there is good. You know? It's like when you're crying and your friend says that one joke that kind of makes you giggle, and then it's that avalanche that starts that makes you feeling better. The fact that that still exists no matter how sad you can get is pretty fascinating and powerful. Under God was added to the pledge. Believe that. History is written by the victor, not the victim. Exactly. Her essay, Memory, Creation, and Fiction, talks about writing the bluest eye. Justice for all, including black people who are stated to be considered 3/5 of a person. Oofed. I feel like I'm getting to when I talked about this. Hegemonic categories tell the history. That's why always minorities are hidden from history. That's the danger of a single story. Chimananda Ngozi. What we read in dystopia is often true. It's like our countries really want us to be ignorant or only to know some things in order to be controlled from a certain point of view. I also asked why I speak funny, meaning my German accent. For a while, maybe not want to talk to strangers after moving here. I mean, if you've heard a good Georgia Southern accent, you could ask why they speak funny too. But yeah, I mean, embrace it. I love your accent, Annie. I'm going to read to Ginger, my cat, now. Yes, Maddie! On the other hand, we Brazilians are taught to hate our country since childhood and look to the northern countries as a reference. I refuse it now. Well, also, refuse that. And Brazilian culture can be beautiful. Brazil is a stunning country with beautiful people and food and rich history. And, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And actually, here in some parts of India, at least, we have the honorary national anthem played before movies and theaters, and I find it so hypocritical. I suppose this is probably quite off topic, but I feel like America lacks the support needed for disabled people, like people who need medication to live and can't afford it. One of the biggest problems that we have is we've managed to brainwash an entire community of people to vote against their own interest in pursuit of some sort of nationalist or supremacist ideal. And they will continually and have continually voted against their own interests in hopes of achieving that. Tessa told me that there's an article that quoted that like Donald Trump is the American poor man's version of a rich man. And I think that's very interesting. The tie between Americanism and Nazism is extremely uncomfortable but necessary to push through these ideas. Yes. I really have problems with the America First attitude. I think anyone that's not brainwashed has problems with the America First attitude. And as we've seen in history, any country that pledges to put itself first just puts itself farther behind. Look at state budgets. They keep taking more away from education. The dumbing down of our country is exactly where our politicians want. Lack of intelligence, let people voice answer. But exactly, why do you think Republicans never try to fix education? Democrats are all, not all. And then liberals are considered to be very educated, but then that education is spoken against them in a way that they're like, wow, look at those liberal elites thinking they're better than us because they've been educated, and then it becomes this thing to oppress people rather than to free them. Adults, older girls, shops, magazines, newspapers, window signs, all the world had agreed that blue-eyed, yellow-haired, pink-skinned doll was what every girl child treasured. Education gives you choices, not just economic ones. Everyone could have that with a little luck, but it gives you the moral choices. It's like a compass. Yes, like a compass. How could I wave that banana bread? Mr. Alberto Carr said, remember when I walked around the hotel with chocolate cookies for the whole day in frickin' July? I do remember that. I'm not allowed to come to Italy anymore. Your government just said that because I'm American. I'm Italian. I don't know whether I should laugh or be mad. Someone's haven't eaten yet. I'm sorry. It was a joke. It was a joke. She threw pasta at me. The fact that you have Americans that can't say every state and capital in America is really bad. And now me saying that, I'm like, wait, am I a hypocrite? Can I say every state and capital? I used to be able to. I know every state, but every capital of every state? That's when it gets hard. Oh no. 10 minutes left. Oh my gosh, thank you, Jordana. 8 minutes left. We do learn American geography. We have learned we do. And anyone that says that we don't just didn't learn it, meaning they didn't. There is a section in our social studies class that is all about geography, and we do learn about American geography and world geography. Now, just because we learn about it doesn't mean they care that we actually learned it. Remember, a lot of the education system in America is not to learn, it's to pass a test. So, you can, if you're like me, you can look at a map for 2 minutes before the test while the teacher's passing it out and blink really fast and think about everything and pick certain dates that you know you're going to miss, and then the teacher can give you the test and you can pass it. Because if you're like me, you can do that. And that's one of the biggest flaws of the American system of education, that people can do that. I'm skimming through comments really quickly. Oh my gosh, Tessa, we got invited to Rita's.
I just saw that.
Tessa just looked at me just as fast, Rita. We're very excited. I wish we could go today. An exact quote from Tessa. One time an American woman asked my father if Brazil was a real country. Well, you should tell that American person that Brazil has a population almost exact to the United States. It is one of the biggest markets in Latin America. It is the biggest country in Latin America and has a giant landmass. You know, like, yes, it's a real country. And the fact that she doesn't know that makes me sad to think of all the things Brazilian that she could have experienced that she hasn't yet. Oh my gosh, my daughter studied geography last year. They gave them maps and colored pencils, told them to color it in, and the test was open book. But then again, that's not incredibly inaccurate to the way we learn and to the way that like the world is when you're an adult. No one ever says, hey, I need you to get me this report, and hey, all from memory, closed book, don't go on the internet. I don't want any new information. No one does that. Yeah, 7th economy in the world. Huge. All of the things Brazilian this woman is missing. So sad for her. When people, I feel so bad. What book are we reading next? Thank you, Maddie McCall, for getting me back on track, knowing that I was going into a rambler. She doesn't know about samba, the best soccer players, some of the most amazing food, brigadeiros. She doesn't know. All right. So everyone, we are going to talk about the next book. We have about 5 minutes left. I'm sorry we didn't get into quotes, but I think we can all agree this whole book is one giant quote of beauty, and the way that Morrison uses the language should be something we all can aspire to. Another thing why I think reading is so important is because you learn different ways in which people use tools. Language is a tool. As an actor, that's how we see it. You could use the words "I love you" as a hammer, or you can use it as a blanket to wrap someone in, you know? She doesn't deserve brigadeiros. So, Toni Morrison has learned an entirely individual way to use the tools of language, and it is one of my favorite quotes. One of my favorite masteries of the craft. So I think we should continue to look at that. Her work is poetry, I agree. I think this live is about this though now. It's about this though. Exactly, we had a great thing. And if you guys want to start sharing quotes on Twitter, I'll share, and I'll share my thoughts about them too. The next book we have is If Beale Street Could Talk, that I think I would love to couple with a conversation about the movie. So we'll talk about that after the first half. So we'll read the first half, which the book is what? 200 pages? Less. 2 weeks. Easy peas. Oh boy, this is going to be hard to talk about. How should we do this? Should we just say the first half? That was annoying. First half is like 3/4 of the book. It's 200 pages, so let's not do this Sunday. Idea. Hang with me here. We're going to read the whole book by next Sunday. Not this Sunday, I believe the 11th or 12th. I'm talking next Sunday, the 18th. Yeah, the 19th. Can we do that? Can we read the entire book by the 19th? And then we'll still do 2 conversations about it, and the second conversation will include the movie. How does that sound? You know what? We'll make different pools. I'll do different things, but I think that works. The whole book in 10 days. Very easy. That's about 20 pages a day. If you read a page a minute, that's 20 minutes. If you read a page every 2 minutes, 40 minutes. If you read somewhere between that, it's 30 minutes a day, which is exactly what I always advocate. rather than doing what I do sometimes, where I try to just read like 100 pages in a sitting. So we will read the entire book by July 19th. July 19th, we will do our first conversation of the book. And then the following week, we will do our second conversation with the book in tandem with the film. So we'll converse about the rest of the book, and then we'll talk about the differences with the film, what the film achieved, that the book might have been trying to achieve, all of that. And then we'll move forward into our final entrance into this, and then we'll probably take a month off, and then we'll start with, maybe we'll continue. I don't know, we'll see what that goes. But so we'll do that. I'll still keep polls going just in case we decide to change things. I've also read 100 pages in a day. I can read 100 pages in an hour, and I bet a lot of you can too. So that's why I was like, 200 pages, 10 days. That's okay. Maybe we'll just do like a check-in live on like Wednesday to see how everyone's reading's going, to see if any questions. Not talking too much about the book, but just kind of catching up with it. And then that following Sunday we'll be like, all right, cool. And then maybe if you guys schedule like a watch along or something for Saturday before we have our second conversation, right? That'd be kind of cool. But I'm sorry if people were confused about today's live. I know I have like 2 minutes left. Thank you for this amazing conversation about another incredible book. Toni Morrison is one of my favorite novelists, authors. Wow. Just wow. Great book. Well, that's the thing. If more people were like, hey, we kind of finished way early. Can we do it earlier? Then we will. But I think right now that this plan is just going to be best. I have 2 minutes left. So thank you again for another book, guys. It was a very important one. One of the most important ones I think we've read. It left a lot of discussions. And now I want us to just travel the world thinking about the inherent biases we have, not only for other people, but for ourselves. How has the world taught us to behave? Not only as people, but then as the genders we perform, then as the binary genders we thought we had to conform to. Like, start assessing those different steps in your life. And I think this is a cool book to start acknowledging the ways in which we were shaped by our outside world, and then how we can either agree and embrace those things or change them. Okay, next live's Apostle Live. Got it. So like I always say, continue searching, continue to be curious, continue questioning, continue learning, and continue growing. Continue to be open. And most importantly, continue to be positive forces of change in your communities. Now more than ever, we need beacons of positivity, hope, and love. That's the only way we're going to change, and it's the only way we're going to grow. Thank you for today. I feel tremendously motivated now for the rest of the day. Yeah, any quotes or anything you want to share on Twitter, awesome. I'll share them as well. Yeah, and I cannot wait to start this next book with you guys. So, enjoy the rest of your week. Have a good weekend this weekend. I will see you next week. And, yeah, have a good one, guys.